Hi there.
Hi, hello.
How you doing?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
Good, good. Yeah, not many people showing up today. I don't know what the deal is. We'll just wait. I'll wait until about 10 after, and if nobody shows up, then we'll just cancel it for today.
Yeah, sure. I'm
Yeah,
okay with that.
yeah. I mean, last week the attendance was pretty light as well. One of the things, so today, I mean, I sent out the agenda, and we were just going to briefly, or we were going to touch on the webinar. And then, and if, Tim isn't showing up today, then, we'll probably postpone anything else. Because the only other thing I had was, the, um, that Dell, model type proposal thing. But, I need to get back with Tim to say, look, we just need to have, we have some things that were, captured as notes, but we really need to, have a real proposal put together, that can go into a section. So at this point, I'm kind of, um, I'll reach out to Tim. He may be uh, busy today or something. Just a reminder: next week is canceled for U.S. holidays. So, um,
Okay, good point.
yeah. So we'll just wait a few more minutes here, and if nobody shows up, we'll just cancel it for today.
Yeah, we can wait till 10 after.
Yeah. All right. Great.
Okay.
Hey there, Tim. Um, we'll just wait a little bit longer here to see if more folks show up. Excuse me.
All right.
And then we'll start in a couple minutes, I guess. If we can get anyone else, but probably make it a shorter meeting today because really just had like the webinar, and then wanted to discuss how we wanted to proceed with the Dell proposal on the model type determination. Um, kind of going from notes to an actual proposal to something that would be included in the spec. So, but I'll wait one more minute here, and we get to start briefly. All right. Well, I'll just go ahead and share my screen. Um, so I sent out the agenda earlier today. Basically, just do a quick recap, schedule review. We'll spend some time talking about the webinar, looking to finalize, the scope of the point seven. I'll just show that. I think we already pretty much finalized it last time, but I don't know if Tim, you were attended then, so I'll just show where we are on that. I want to talk about this, you know, the model type proposal thing. Kind of try to decide what are the next steps in getting that moving forward. Um, and then probably after that we'll just drop because we don't have a lot of folks on today. So um, here. Okay, so well, I mean, pretty much last meeting we talked about the webinar. It was the complete focus and the webinar slides. The final ones are in the Google Drive. I'm still trying to get Michael Schill's attention. I know he's busy with Supercompute 25, and that may be one of the reasons why folks aren't joining today is Supercompute 25. So just trying to get it sorted out. What do we do about getting the replay on a public location, public link somewhere? Maybe that's just through the MHS wiki. Maybe that's something else. I just don't know exactly what the process is and what they do. They didn't provide me any information on that, so I'll ping them again. But as far as the webinar, overall, I mean, we had at one point 26 people, including the speakers. So, I mean, that's glass half full. We at least got people who weren't part of the plug and play or MHS joining. So hopefully, they got a good understanding, and they'll be sending us any questions, and hopefully reviewing specs and things like that. So we'll see what happens there. But yeah, overall, I thought it went really well. Tim, I don't you have any thoughts or any comments?
I do not.
Okay.
Neither do I.
All right. So yeah, I mean, pretty much one of the things that we were thinking is, should there be a public monthly meeting, at some point? I don't know when we would want to do that, whether it's next year sometime, wait until the 0.7, or do we start it sooner? I mean, I'm just trying to gauge, I don't want to have a meeting and then nobody show up, so, it's basically, but I mentioned that today, if anybody's interested in having a public meeting, we could do that once a month and then see if we can get some industry feedback. I just don't know when the timing would be right for that. I don't know if anybody has any thoughts or comments on that.
Status is relayed through Brian's monthly, but
Yeah.
you're wanting a public. I mean, is there enough content and interest to have something where people can Q&A? I don't know.
That's the question. Yeah. I mean, I think we have a lot of content. I just don't know if there's a lot of questions and a lot of, enough public, interest to go attend it. That's really the key. It's like, I'm hoping that we get some things on the reflector and start getting questions. If we start, maybe the watermark is we start getting a lot of questions that we could say, well, we could have a public meeting to have a discussion about some of these questions. But so far I've seen nothing. So
right, exactly.
Yeah. So it's kind of like, okay, you public, you tell us, until then it's kind of a, all right, well, we would gladly hold something if you were interested enough. So
right.
Yeah, I suspect it's going to take, we get these webinars, up, and people will look at them at their leisure. Maybe into next year, people will be, thinking about it more, or looking at it, reviewing it. Kind of with the with the 0.7, showing up sometime next year in the first quarter. Then it's kind of like, okay, well, maybe they'll start paying attention. I don't know. So we'll see. We'll overall went well. So, and we'll get the next one showing up in a couple weeks, actually a week and a half or so, right after the holidays, or after the Thanksgiving holiday. So just,
if interest doesn't increase,
yeah,
then is it? Do you still feel it should be taken to a 1.0 and loaded as a contribution and work on something else? Or
yeah, I think it should go to a 1.0. And say, look, we spent all this time. This is a 1.0, and then try to evangelize that 1.0. And say, look, we created the spec. It's 1.0. These three specs here, all this collateral, all this, tools, etc. What is preventing people from adopting it? That's really, because to be honest, I mean, what I hear is it's not 1.0 yet, so we're not really worried about it. But it's like, well, okay, but please give us any feedback prior. And people say they're going to do it, and I suspect that people are still thinking a 0.5 is too early. So that's, but I'm going to keep saying that there's enough content in the 0.5 for you to give us some meaningful feedback. Every chance I get. Now, if we get to 0.7 and then that's the signal for people to all of a sudden pay attention to it, then we'll go ahead and have to go, well, it's better late than never to get some feedback, and then potentially have a 0.9 and based off of the whatever feedback. And we'll see. I mean, but yeah, I think it's complete, get a 1.0, and then if people come back and say, well, I finally looked at it and here are the problems, well, then we'll have to address it then. I mean, but it's, definitely want to just get it done and say this is based off of the whatever feedback we got, whatever little feedback, plus our own and the needs and requirements and from CLA members. This is what we came up with, and you tell us what you don't like. But yeah,
Right.
I think it's.
I mean, that seemed that approach. It's bad in that there's not a whole ton of representation of ideas, but
right.
it could be potentially good in that we can move quicker to get to that level of maturity and for sure meet the schedule that you're talking about. But we might need to be, or wanting to be, not need to be, of what it means to be 1.0, if based on availability and time and what because it's kind of hard at the end. We're done with the easy stuff.
Yeah.
We're now getting to the more esoteric, harder stuff, and the things that are like, should this be taught? Should it not be taught? Does it help to teach, or does it not help? And is it too much minutia that we could spend our careers on, at least for the next
several years? Yeah, or year or so, year or more.
Well, I meant until your 1.0 time frame. Not that
we get to this,
but
and say, yeah. No. I mean, agreed. It's to a certain point we're going to say, well, we're not going to add that, teach certain things in the spec because we don't see, we don't have a need to do that, or we think it's too prescriptive. We get to a certain point, we're saying, well, this is good enough to be, what we think to be baseline interoperable. But if other people don't agree, then come to the table.
Got it. Agreed.
Yeah. So we're marching towards what we can march towards, and then go from there. So, yeah. So we're here. I did the debrief here. The model type proposal. I'll pull that up here in a second, but switching gears here, the finalize the effort tasks. I mean, this schedule is a loose schedule. I have all this potential for a 0.9. We can eat into this. That's no big deal. If we need more time in the 0.7, fine. It's a win if we get a 0.7 release before the regional summit. Because then that gives us something tangible to talk about. And I don't, at this point, I don't know if I would get to go to the regional summit. I'm going to ask. I'll see what my management, what their stomach is for travel. I don't know if you would get any travel to the regional summit. I think it's Barcelona, maybe some tangential things I can do in Barcelona. So but
Right.
but I
You
don't
know,
know.
no lack of desire, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't believe my company sends people to the foreign one. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, we have, you know, on a case by case basis, um, in the past, but I haven't gone to that. Other people have. So maybe other people
I
would
mean,
be.
I know Stewie did. John Stewie did because he was the head of like a major project and had to
Yeah.
or something. But that's all I know.
Okay. Yeah. 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 So it'll be something to talk about, you know, over the, you know, in the new year, is to figure out what we would do for the regional.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one thing is, I actually am going to take off on the 18th. So unless somebody else wants to run this, I was going to go ahead and cancel the 18th as well. Is everybody okay with that, or?
I'm gonna be out after the 11th.
So it sounds to me like this should be, you know, one to cancel as well, because if I'm not going to be there, you're not going to be there. I know a lot of other people are going to be out.
Yeah.
All right, so yeah, that leaves, we've got some things we can talk about, um, over the course of the next, couple items. Um, I guess on the model type proposal, when I look back, well, the scope, we were going to look at the scope. I think we were all pretty much happy with this. I don't know if you've had a chance, Tim, to look through this, what the 0.7 scope is. Um,
I have not in a while.
I'll just walk through it. Even though there's only us here, I'll just walk through it. And then, so the first one is we took a lot of notes around the model type determination.
Yeah.
What we would like to do is, if since this was a Dell proposal, you kind of had some things sketched out in an email, but can we get it in a document so that we can start poking holes at it and getting it reviewed?
We can formalize it. There the Dell specification on this item can't fit in one cell of a spreadsheet. It's
right.
It's like 10, even though the method is pretty straightforward. Model types HVM plus, and then what we don't include here is the like how you mutate the planar, I'm saying planar, I meant HVM type, because there are umpteen ways to do it.
Yeah.
And we've implemented umpteen plus ways to do it over the years, and we've settled on a path that seems to be working well, but others may choose to do different. And the whole idea of mutation means if you have an HVM and an SCM, clearly those both have vendor ID and type. You can add those up, but you also have a combination HVM SCM that goes into, I think our record is like 7 platforms, something like that.
Yeah.
So you need something else that mutates and another piece of information, so that at time 0 of the BMC, and there's certain mechanisms where you often want to know that even before you're getting into like BMC Linux device tree.
Sure.
To configure everything, all the IO, all the sensors, blah 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 on the first good boot. And BIOS needs it extremely early in post as well. So yeah, I mean, I can formalize if that's a request. And
yeah, please do. And then we can kind of put our comments in it and figure out what that would look like as part of the spec. Because some of those parameters in this model type equation come from the JSON file, could come from the FRU directly, and then the IPMI record, the peripheral record. So we can kind of show, well, this is where you would get this information from to form this equation, and then that is the thing that you would use, like you said, to create the various mutations, flavors, whatever, for your model.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that the main thing is having that in a document so we can start working on that.
Understood. Yep.
All right, cool.
Handle that.
Another one, you had something about the nested P cards. What we were wanting to ask you is, again, another one of putting together a proposal, a document we could start, capturing, the ideas in. This one is, further down. This is more, I'd say, a one that we should do sooner. This one is something that could be, after the first of the year. It's not critical.
It's fairly advanced, and you have a lot of choices on how to do that, right? But there are series where you have a peripheral card that is doing something, even if it's something as simple as changing the connectorization, but as big as some active subsystem that also passes through the equivalent of XIO and PIC power downstream, so you can do all that end-to-end correlation. So really the only piece to teach, I think, is S to D.
Right.
On the downstream, it has the end device is providing the stimulus to the intermediate device's response, because you've already done the intermediate's stimulus back to the source's response, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and some concrete examples, like maybe I can imagine, maybe some sort of PCI switchboard that also provides, a bunch of, XIO and PIC power, and then you have to do S to D on that. Maybe that's an example that would work. But you could, if you have other examples, please, get them in there.
Okay.
And then, all right, cool, thanks. The NVMe hot plug direct attach versus switched. We kind of said in the past we had it on our list. I was kind of like, we had talked about hot plug in general. The path is inconsistent. How much should we teach here in the spec? What guidance would we need? I can create a starting point, but I think that's just a big wide open topic, a starting point to capture things, and then figure out, what is it that we actually should put in the spec around hot plug in general versus just,
and
this
there
is how
were
it fits in the framework, and that's it.
We're actively, or we just finished up some work to look at this whole problem holistically end to end. And historically, there's been about 5 methods to do this, and we're at the point where across the industry, there's 3 methods to do it, I think, and we love our way, but we may be starting to implement non-optimal solution for commonality, in some cases being forced to do that. You may not fully owned end-to-end all the pieces of hardware, for example, or be able to influence that design. And there's some designs that are, so, we kind of concluded last week, we're like, we have exactly 3 methods and nobody's flinching, and we don't know how to make people flinch to collapse 3 methods into 2 or 1. And it's actually, in the end, it's pretty straightforward, and you can explain pretty easily what and why and make the cases. But would we say here's 3 methods? Like, I don't know, because it's like we've had to teach a lot of companies, including major providers, including switches and CPUs, etc., how to do pieces of this. And in the end, we're still at 3 different methods, and we love our method, but I don't know if I could even convince you to do it. But you would look at it and say, yes, that's a superior way to do it, but I'm forced to do it this other way. That is ridiculously more expensive, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Sure.
So
Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, we can create the starting point, put the different methods in there. Capture the different methods, talk about them. You know.
I mean, we're very flexible at backing off and being like, all right, we're going to implement the non-optimal way,
Sure.
even across the board. And we looked at it and like, I can't, with a good conscience, go with a much worse way to do this.
Yeah.
That's not functionally changing anything.
Yeah.
Yet costs more OpEx, more blah 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 blah.
Sure.
Yeah. So it's hard because like the whole MXIO, MCIO, etc. didn't take it as far as it should have in terms of the FlexIO usages and where they live, like the definitions of those sidebands. And some people are doing some really funky things that are problematic in certain ways, and it causes a ripple effect. And then they lock in and get entrenched and anchored on, I can't change this in any way, which has this ripple effect upstream and downstream of that interconnect on exactly how you have to do the end to end. So in the end, you have to implement, or we do, a subsystem that's over designed, because if you wanted a reused entity, it's going to be 1, 2, or 3 different methods to accomplish this. And yeah, so we're kind of like at this impasse of, I don't know how to unless there's we can share this stuff and garner support, and even if it's goodness can be in even agreeing on, yes, there's a lot of agreement to collapse that into one method would be great. And yeah, I'm not sure exactly how to encroach. I know we have where I'm empowered, at least from my company perspective, to do things if it's helpful to share and commoditize certain things.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's where we can, I can at least start a document and we can capture the proposals and I mean the different methods and capture, figure out what it is we want to include in the spec around hot plug.
Right.
Next one is the rediscovery procedure. I think we were trying to figure out, what it is that we need to add in the spec. It's on the, the to-do list. What should it's rediscovery peripheral in S5 as opposed to AC off. Detected, some sort of cable presence breaking. What do you do? I mean, it's kind of in some
It's
cases.
usually it's less about like something came unplugged as someone inadvertently was too lazy to unplug the input power before
Yes.
they think the system's off and they're plugging and unplugging things that aren't hot pluggable. And then you're like, do I just say, sorry, you were out of bounds of what was in a user guide, and you could have caused issues? Or do I go above and beyond to actually try to rediscover things and then have that penalty at all times? Because otherwise, if you ignore it, you can easily cache a lot of the capabilities and stuff and skip and move on and move faster. So that's the crux of whether to support this or not, with differing opinions. Some people are like, it's not in scope, forget it, I'm gonna optimize for everything around it. Others are, if I have a general purpose machine and someone, whether it be factory, service, use whatever, starts doing things, and in some cases it doesn't matter, like ORV3, you can't really access the top unless you disengage it from its input power, typically, that kind of stuff. In other cases, you know, down to commodity towers and stuff, it's like, sure, it's just like a PC. You can do what you want.
Right. Yeah. It's like you just, should it be the policy? It sees a change and just says, raise the
I mean,
error.
yeah.
Say, well, you
I
got
mean,
to
for now,
cycle because you did something that shouldn't have done. Yeah.
right. And with that
Is it?
view of it, I can't substantiate spending time
Yeah.
on something meaningful around rediscovery. It's teaching a what if you believe in this and you do that, then otherwise, or it's just things to look out for from people who do this all the time. I don't know. It's a hard one to substantiate spending time on. That's all I can
Right.
say.
Yeah. I mean, it may just be we didn't add it in the spec to say this is not supported. If you know,
Or it's just out of scope. I wouldn't say
it's
not
out of
supported,
scope.
it's just out of scope. If
It's out
you
of scope.
if you
Yeah.
have something, this is a focused on primarily happy path, using within typical bounds. If we start to take on sad path,
Yeah. I mean, there's sad path that we're going to add, but that sad path that we intended to add on things that are in scope. But
yeah,
is a sad path for things out of scope.
there's sad path of errors
Yeah, that's what I
and
meant. Yeah.
natural, and then there's unnatural abuse or misuse. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, basically, that's easy enough. Just add it in the scope that this is out of scope. That's it.
Mm.
So you do things that you shouldn't be doing. Well, it's the what is it? The FAFO, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll have to
Anyway,
look at
yeah, the not safe for work, acronym, but yeah, it's
Yeah.
basically that thing. Yeah. Anyway, this next one was just the air path, sad paths. We were through, I think, kind of section by section. There's a lot of things missing in the discovery process. And in fact, I just talking, putting together the webinar for the discovery process, I noticed that we had things wrong anyway. So it's sort of when we go review the discovery process section, walk through it and add sad paths, but also review it to make sure it's, there are a few things that were wrong. A few correct anyway in discovery process section and step-by-step review. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of a thing we'll be doing, next year as we're reviewing it. So one of the next two items here around boot, these are all kind of provisional things that we need to look at, but one of the problem is, so we're still trying to get in, start, engaging with OBMF. I don't know if Tim, if you've already started attending their meetings or anybody from Dell attending their meetings. We have not.
We have not yet. We have there's an issue with the CLA that they used that's kind of hung us up right at the moment. And but once that's resolved, which we're have emails on it going right now. We plan to attend. There's one major concern that's being discussed there.
Yeah.
That DMTF has fundamental issues with. There is a public website that you can go read all the docs that have been published so far.
Yeah. So we're kind of in the same boat. So yeah, we're trying to get the CLA signed, and in the meantime, we hear some of the drama. So
there's a bit of drama, and I don't have faith that it's going to solve the world's problems, but I do believe it will help in the virtual legacy devices over USB kind of approach. For our like what one of the SCM 3.0 schemes are, which we're looking at pretty hard.
Yeah, right. So I'm, trying to figure out, how much of this do we define and need to deal with versus how much can be, punted off to what OBMF is going to, just basically we just, kind of set the table and then hand off to OBMF to, kind of, put the food out, so to speak, I guess, deliver the goods during boot. So, and that's, and part of the problem is not really being able to attend the OBMF meetings. I can't, it's hard to bring it up.
I don't believe that they're going to do stuff that you would put into like the platform enablement.
Yeah.
I think it's at this point, it's more what they call interface consolidation protocol.
Yeah. It's sort of, so where is it, how do we get to go from, the early boot, how do we get it sort of pointed to, the various protocols that they're proposing for consolidation over, one or more physical interfaces. So I think we have the job of pointing out which interfaces OBMF is supported, that OBMF will be on top of, right? The either, USB or,
right.
IGC or whatever. So yeah, so it's sort of that, but then OBMF takes over, but then there's stuff that goes above that they're just enabling, like the MMBI and so on. So then the question is, are they going to spend any time defining any payloads, or where does that come from? Is that something we should be involved in? I mean, that's the question. Is
same everything on our side.
So
and until we get involved and can really digest the scope, help them, get through the drama of what the drama stuff, and be like, well, did anyone coming into this really think they would be working on an MCTP light protocol from the ground up? I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of okay. Unclear. Where does the scope end? Who's doing what? And then also the open platform firmware guys are kind of going off trying to define a bunch of platform configuration. So they said some sort of unified platform configuration thing, and it's like, okay, so it seems like it's overlaps a bit, but not exactly. It talks about a bunch of other things that we're not covering. So is there something there that we can point to?
I think that might be a better engagement, even short term, because I know we had some back and forth with Inside on those. I haven't even watched their presentation or looked at it from OCP yet. I'm sure other people in my company have, but going to see, clicking into that seems more fruitful in the short term around the stuff around platform config and platform enablement, more so than a more revolutionary hardware architecture that needs new software methods to accomplish.
So I mean, it's been on my to-do list to go ping those guys and, hey, where are you guys? I'm disappointed that I didn't see them attending the webinar, but they can watch the replay. So so I could ping them, see where they are. I probably, hopefully we'll get an answer on the replay, and then I could point them to that and say, look, we'd like to, re-engage. It's been over a month after the, CP summit. So, those guys were trying to get a 0.3 done. I don't know, are they still, how far away are they from that 0.3? If they have a 0.3 ready for us to look at. And the 0.3 I'm talking about is their platform configuration 0.3 versus there is a 0.3 for some of the OPF items, but some of the other specs. But and just trying to understand,
and how static is their process versus dynamic. Is what I'd be looking toward. Because if it's a tablification of static,
well, it seems like they have some static things and some not static things. So that's why, and it's not fully defined. It's just kind of, what they have defined is more directional language visions. They were talking about, what are the formats of the the content that they want to pass back and forth. They kept going on about some sort of binary pack thing versus using like JSON or XML. And then they talked about, well, it could be in JSON and XML and they get translated to binary packed. And it's like, okay, well, sure. But, what, look at what we've got, in the JSON file and how much can you use out of that to build whatever binary packed thing you want to pass back and forth between the BMC and bias. So,
Yep.
yeah. And so that's where we are there. Then certificate, security stuff, that's still on our agenda to look at next year. Kind of start, look at what we've got. And I know I pinged Bill about, when is he going to look at getting any of the security related features in the DSP 220 spec. He said he would start looking at that. And we didn't need to wait for PQC to be fully baked in SPDM. We can just get something in there. It's non-PQC, and then PQC can be added, as a point release some way later on down the line. So, and then tools. So we'll keep looking at tools. I guess, David, are you still on track to have something released by the end of the year, or you think it's going to be first quarter next year?
I was hoping that I will manage to release the validation tool before New Year, but I'm not so sure anymore. So
Okay, well,
probably it will be first quarter.
Sure. Yeah, as soon as you can get it, just let us know, and we'll keep plugging away on tools.
Definitely.
Thanks. A couple things like wanted to take a look at, what is in like the OCP NIC spec, PCIe Chem, like what is in the PCI spec that there's anything that we think is missing that we would want to have, basically proposed into those specs for any interoperability needs. I don't know. I haven't dug into, what are in their
propose into those specs.
Yeah. Is there anything that?
Oh yeah, for sure. There's a lot.
Well, yeah. So the question is, what do we need to see, from when you read their FRUs to sort of finish off the full discovery? Is there something missing?
Yeah, the fundamental right now on at least like PCIe is that since for backward compatibility, they've never required a FRU. And now if we say you have to have one only with these new optional features, if we come up and say, all right, Chem 7.0, PCIe 7, something upcoming, and be like, yeah, all of a sudden it's required. And it is now here are all the attributes we want, power, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Then
cable, just, S to D on the aux cable, all that. Then.
Well, we can, put together a, once list for PCIe 7 for through content, and ask to that through is required. I think that would be I think at a minimum we would want to have the FRU being a requirement. Otherwise, how in the heck are you going to know that it's
good
there?
luck.
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying we can ask. You can always ask.
It's only 5 seconds.
Sorry, what you cut out there for a second. And Tim, you cut out there. I couldn't hear you. Can you please repeat that? Or maybe my connection's going bad.
No,
go ahead.
I think
bad.
No, I was in a stairwell.
Oh, okay.
Well,
we can always ask.
I said I've had companies who make a $10,000 card said no to a 5-cent EEPROM.
Oh boy. Well, yeah. Okay. Well, we can ask, see what happens, and then the any wants list for things that need to be in that the FRU contents.
Right.
And then, same thing with OCP NIC. There's a fru there. Is there anything that needs to be added? We'll take a look. And so it's another exercise. So one thing here is, I guess this is, I don't know what I would, I don't know what I would call it, but we've been talking about a netlist convention, some sort of document that has a guidance around, hey, if you name your nets this way, the tools will be seamlessly work and pull, take your net list and pull it into creating a JSON file, sort of create what are the prefixes and suffixes that you would have, added to, bus names and things like that. So, when you get passed through muxes and you add certain other, control signals for the muxes, what are the different, conventions that we should have there? Definitely want to have something, I don't know if that, falls into the Fru Discovery boot spec or if it's just a separate spec that we put together, that has the conventions. So maybe a spec. I mean, I can see it as being a separate spec that's not necessarily very big, but it has, the conventions in certain tables or things like that. Talk about certain, here's some conventions for certain buses, when you go through muxes, etc. Seems to me that's a separate spec. So, but willing to, yeah, I'll put notes. And then any example net lists that we can point to. Trick said he was going to try to look at the OCP contributions database, see if there's any Allegro files. But basically, I can't contribute our net lists, the actual ones. So if somebody's got a board that's out there and HPM, contributed to OCP board design, then you can certainly take that net list. And hopefully it's a HPM type one. So, but we'll see. But this is the scope that I've got right now. Any questions? Anything that we're missing? Any thoughts?
None so far.
Nothing from me.
Well, yeah, add more things as we go. I think that's all I wanted to go through today because there's only the three of us. So, we can hopefully when we get back from holidays, there'll be more people showing up.
Sure.
Hopefully. We'll see.
Okay. Have a good
All right.
holiday.
Well, thanks.
Bye.
You too.
Bye.
And I'll cancel the
Thank
18th.
you.
Thanks. All right. Bye.
Bye.